Welcome to today's podcast. In today's podcast, we'll be diving into personal branding for professionals and CEOs. And today, we're diving deep with Alan McLaren, a personal branding maestro who's helped over 600 CEOs transform their professional identities. As co-founder of Strata Originals, Alan isn't just another marketing expert, he's a brand whisperer who helps leaders see themselves in a completely new light. I must tell you that in today's episode, I got to learn a lot. So let's dive in without wasting much time.
Okay. You specialize in personal branding, and I'd love for you to walk me through the moment you realized that personal branding was more than just a buzzword. What specific experience cracked the code for you?
Well, as a company, we've been working with thought leaders for over 20 years, but what we saw was an opportunity in the last 4 or 5 years, especially with the advent of AI, to humanize connections and nurturing relationships on social media would be an advantage and a differentiator for leaders. And so we looked around the markets and we didn't see any services that were easy to buy. You could buy from a PR firm or you could buy from a consultant, but there was really nothing systematized or productized. So we saw that opportunity, and then we productized the offering and realized that after starting to work in this business, how exciting and transformational it was to watch CEOs not only learn how to post and do content, but actually transform themselves to be able to actually be sharing their gifts with the world. So that's how we discovered it, and we've actually discovered an incredible passion for the business, which we deal with every day.
Yeah. You know, when I was scrolling through your profile of Podmatch, I was like, wow. The thought that ran through my mind was for most of the content creators out there, most of the people teaching people how to create content, either they're full-time content creators or one thing or the other. It's like the amount of persons that are professionals actually teaching professionals how to create content, how to be thought leaders, how to be a voice out there. It's small compared to the other number of persons telling people how to become a content creator business.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the way that we look at it is, although the expression of the work we do is in content, there's lots of ways to develop content. But really what the secret is to develop content that shows you as a teacher and a giver and not selling, because because what we're talking about with personal branding is reputation, isn't it? And when you have reputation that's positive and you nurture relationships, leads come to you without selling, because people say, oh, that's a smart person. I like that person. And more importantly, I trust that person. And the one thing that we've discovered is they believe that they know you because they've spent time with you, especially since in our world, we recommend video content as the exclusive content for the customers we work with, exactly for that reason.
Wow. So I think it's taking us back to the reasons why people buy. People buy from the people they know, they like, and they trust.
You got it.
Yeah, and
That's exactly right.
being a voice out there, it's an opportunity to build that.
Yeah, know, like, and trust is been around forever, but this is the beautiful part about what we do is that we help people figure out how to scale that, right? You can I had a lead come to me from New York, and I had a lead come to me from Cyprus. I didn't know these people. They saw my video. They said, "Oh, we really like the way you come across, and you lead with your heart, and you're really trying to be helpful." Never sold a thing. Never told them about my services or anything. And they said, "I want to find out more because I want to work with you." I mean, that could never happen 10 years ago, but it happens today.
When we share with generosity, the people receiving that message, they feel it.
They absolutely feel it, and it comes back to this word you've heard 1,000 times, but it's being authentic, right? It's not trying to be somebody you're not. If you're not funny, don't tell jokes. If you're not incredibly intellectual, don't try to be intellectual. Just be the same as if you were having a coffee with somebody in a coffee shop and they asked you a question about something you do. you would share it in that way. Of course, there's a couple of techniques that you want to do to make sure you can capture people and capture their attention on social media, because it is a very noisy thing. But at the end of the day, that's the key. Because if you think of it, personal branding differs from marketing in that marketing is a push strategy where you're interrupting people to sell your stuff. Personal branding is an attraction strategy, right? So you'll become a magnet for opportunities if, and very important if, you deliver valuable content in a generous way, the way you described it, Wisdom, but also be consistent and do it for a long time, because it doesn't happen overnight, because trust takes time. But once you reach that place, kind of magic happens over time.
Yeah. Now, from your profile, it says that you've worked with over 600 CEOs, right? I'd love for you to tell me
Yeah.
about the most surprising personal brand transformation you've witnessed.
You know what's incredible? I'll give you the generic issue and then I'll talk to you about a specific example. What's incredible about CEOs is they are no different than anybody else. They have the same fears, they have the same challenges, they have the same confidence issues, they have the same issues of feeling authentic when they're out there. So that was a 9 out of almost 90% of the people we worked with had that at the beginning. And then I'll give you an example of a perfect transformation. There was a client who's still a client of ours today, and I won't go through her background because I don't want to make it public, but ultimately, she was very fearful about getting out on social media. She was fearful about how she'd come across and, would she come across authentically? So we worked with her. We taught her the power of storytelling, the power of how to actually structure a video, and the magic in her stories. She had stories for 20 years of being as a CEO in business. And once she got that confidence and practiced, and it is a practice skill. Let's not be, you don't just jump on a camera and be natural at it. Once she got that, oh my God, Wisdom, she was unstoppable. The first few videos were not easy, but after that, she could bang out 8 or 9 videos in an hour of 2 minutes each. And that's transformation, because at the end of that whole thing, she decided to start her own business. And now she's rocking it all around the world.
Yeah. Yeah, because CEOs in companies, they are the key persons of influence. They are kind of like the face of the company in a way. And apart from their own personal benefits of building their brand, it gets to rub off on the company itself.
100%. They are the face, and the think about the opportunity that, how do people really understand what a company's about? If they go to the website, they can check that out, but the website's not really human. It's usually written content, some video content. But boy, wouldn't it be amazing if the CEO was out there? They humanize the business, they help the business build trust. And then what happens when their salespeople or their marketing happens? It makes it better, because they say, I already seen your CEO. What a nice person. What a smart person, sharing their values, sharing the best of them. So when you do personal branding properly, it makes everything else better, because you have a foundation of trust. So that's what humanization does. And boy, if you do it right, your competition won't know what hit them. But not many CEOs are out there, and that's kind of a shame.
Yeah, yeah. I off the top of my head, I can think of a lot of big companies with their CEOs are there, like Tesla, Elon Musk,
Yep.
Richard Branson, Virgin, Tim
Yep.
Cook, and a whole lot of others. And one of the things I noticed is that the CEO's personal Twitter or whatever page has more following than the company itself, and it just goes to show how people are looking for the personal touch instead of the corporate brand and all that.
Yeah, and what happens with a lot of these larger CEOs is they are essentially celebrities in their own right? Because they've reached a place where they weren't necessarily intentional about building their personal brand, but because they achieved such great success, they ended up building their personal brand, and then on the back end would now want to give back. So if you look at a Richard Branson, he's someone who's giving back a lot. Elon Musk, with all due respect, Elon Musk couldn't care less about giving back to anybody, but he has a personal brand, and obviously that changed and is changing as he's involved more politically. So then you
Yeah.
kind of look at it and say, well, imagine if you're a business of 5 million, 2 million, $1 million business, it doesn't really matter, and you become the face of that business, that can really transform how you do business and who you do business with. So you have to differentiate sometimes between the big celebrities and the average CEO, which is the 2 or 3 million CEOs that don't have businesses of that size.
Yeah, yeah, I get it. Like, um, so someone like Elon Musk, not everybody agrees with what he does or what he stands for. But I think what he does and what he stands for and everything, both the good and the bad, I think that's what makes him Elon Musk. And if someone else was to try to do that, that would be a recipe for disaster.
100%. Because the one thing that, however you like the person or you don't, he's authentic. He is himself. And
Yeah,
that in itself is a great thing. But that's the beauty of personal branding. When you really think about it, we all have a personal brand. You and I have talked about Elon Musk. You and I have, opinions on him. Richard Branson, we have opinions on them. We don't know them personally.
yeah,
We just know it based on our interactions with them.
yeah,
So if you extrapolate that to a CEO or someone on social that you get to know because of the content that they're delivering, then you build a wall around them and going, oh, what a good person. I like this person, or I don't like this person. That's fine too.
yeah. I think ultimately we have to stand for something and creating content and even building a personal brand. I think for most of us, as much as it gives that value to the company and all that, it actually helps us to find and refine and actually know ourselves as individuals to know, okay, this is what I truly stand for.
Correct. That's the starting point of all the work that we do, Wisdom, is that we start out with a session of what we call a brand DNA, which is essentially a session on clarity. How do you get clear on who you are, what your talents are, what your perspectives are, how the world sees you, and is it congruent with how you want the world to see you? And then what is the strategic plan to be able to get yourself out there based on all of the things that you have in your life? We call them the gifts, but what are those perspectives and opportunities that you have to be able to share with the world? That's the first step. So you're absolutely right. And once you have that, then you can decide on what content you want to put out in the world because you're clear on your why or your purpose or the gifts that you can share with the world, and then be very clear on your objectives, on what you're trying to achieve, because that matters too. Do you want to drive revenue for your business? Do you want to sell your business? Do you want your employees to be proud? Do you want to build a legacy? There's, dozens and dozens of reasons why, and yours will be unique to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think going back to the drawing board and understanding, okay, this is what I stand for and this is what I seek to achieve. If not, at the end of the day, we'll just become another talking drum, another sounding drum in the echo chamber of people making noise online.
You got it. You said it right. And people ask me all the time, how do you cut through the noise? Well, the important thing is if you just look at your LinkedIn as an example, let's assume for argument's sake you have 1,000 people on your LinkedIn. The first question I ask my clients is, how many people actually know what you do for a living?
Mm,
And the answer is about 10%. I said, that's 100 people. So that means 900 people don't know what you do for a living, or they think you're in marketing, which is fine. But, my category would be marketing, but I'm not doing marketing. So they make, oh, you know what? I don't know. And then what happens is you'll never get referrals. So when you do a good job not pitching your brand, but leveraging your personal brand authentically, now maybe that 10% goes to 20 or to 30%. Now 300 people know what you do. Is that an opportunity for referrals? 100%, because their buddies will ask them, because I'm sure it's happened to you. Hey, do you know a good lawyer that helps with M&A? Or do you know a good email marketer? That's what happens. You want to be that person that they think about, and you'll never have to sell them. You just have to expose them to your videos. And since they already know you, they have a better chance of interacting and engaging with your content. And that's where the power kicks in.
yeah, I feel like ultimately people buy from the people they remember when they're about to buy. And while on most profiles, people there are big titles and all those things out there, but the truth is that most people don't even know, they don't even understand. Okay, they get it that, oh, you are a COO and whatever, but nobody really understands what that even means. You get, and when discussion comes up, when people talk about, oh, I need someone to manage and run the operation of my business, I'm like, yeah, do you have anybody that you could recommend? I don't really know. I don't have anybody. And he knows about you, but he knows you're a CEO, but he doesn't even know that, okay, CEO is, I do the operation of the business, I make sure everything doesn't break and all that, right?
Got it. It's exactly right. That's why it's important, if we're just talking about LinkedIn for a moment, that your story is a good story, because what happens is, as you start to get your content out there, as you know, you get impressions, right? Which are people where they're served your content. But then the other metric is profile views, is who's checking you out after they got exposed to your video. So once they're checking you out, so I'll give you a perfect example. I had a gentleman, I was in a WhatsApp group, and I saw this gentleman interacting, and I thought, wow, what a cool guy. Let me go look him up on LinkedIn. I go look him up on LinkedIn, and all I said was, hey, would love to connect with you. You sound like a really cool guy, and I hope we can learn from each other. That was it. He connects, he comes back to me, and he says, hey, Alan, happy to connect. I notice you're a personal branding expert. I've been having trouble with that. Do you mind spending a few minutes with me to talk to me about that?
Yeah,
Do you see what just happened there? So
yeah,
I went from one platform, and I'm giving, right? I'm here to help. And he sees my title, and the first thing is personal branding expert. You know what I am, and said, I need your help.
yeah,
And that's what everybody can do in the worlds that they are, as long as the content they develop is authentic and giving, as the words you use, a generosity mindset. That plays well because it feels much better, because it's a trust exercise.
yeah. I feel personally that getting people to understand, like in true essence, what you do without all the embellishments of titles and all that, it's not just for the people to hire you. It's more of for the people to bring you up in conversations. Because, for example, now you talked about you being a personal branding expert. Of course, we'll come back. We'll come to that point where we'll define what personal branding and all that means. But someone who knows they need personal branding, with that person, his problem is almost half solved because he knows the problem he has, and he knows what he needs to solve that who he needs to solve that problem. But then someone might be engaging with someone in a conversation and say, "Oh, I'm struggling positioning myself out there, putting myself out there, getting people to see me and stuff like that." And that person might know you, but he knows that you do personal branding, but he doesn't even know that, oh, this stuff that this guy is talking about is what this guy calls personal branding. And he would have recommended you that, I know a guy on LinkedIn, the guy seems like he knows his stuff. You should check him out. But he doesn't even get that, oh, this thing this guy is describing is what this guy does for a living and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And that's where what I look at, especially with personal branding, most people don't understand what that really means, right? And
Yeah.
so the first job we have is that we're building demand by evangelizing. That's why a lot of the work we do is listening to the voice of the customer and then delivering content that answers those things. And I'll give you an example. We had a who's known us. He saw us on a webinar, and he's been following us for over a year. And he texted me and said, not what's he contacted me on LinkedIn and said, Alan, I got to be honest. I've been avoiding you because I want to work with you, but I'm terrified of doing video.
Mm,
So you know what? I understand that you're not alone. I said, why don't we have a conversation to make sure we can be really, really, really clear? So we set up a meeting. I sent him my link. We set up a meeting. You know what the fear was? It wasn't video. It was being authentic on video.
yeah. 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 Like,
Right?
I,
How do I? So that's what you have to, and that's what the issue is. He was convinced it's the right thing to do, but we would have said, well, he's just afraid. So what did I do? I did a video on fear and how you can look at it on on my LinkedIn and go say, oh, it's about fear. And then I actually sent him that video and I said, you inspired this video. And he laughed, and that's what brought us back together. And now he's going to become a customer.
yeah.
So it's an ecosystem of goodness and sharing. And you know what my good friend always tells me, that you always have to think of selling is really serving. When you're helping people do the right thing for themselves, then it's a service you're giving to somebody, and it's a gift you're giving to them because they will transform and get great benefits. The problem is personal branding's never been in that box before. It's been in the look at me, I'm an influencer, look how smart I am, look at all the awards I've won. Nobody cares about that stuff. Nobody cares. But they do care
Yeah.
about you as a human being, right? Why do you do a podcast, Wisdom? There's a reason for that. Why
Yeah.
does anybody do a podcast or a speaking gig or anything? Is they have a reason to do that to get their voice out there. What we do is say, look, do that and make sure you have your social media well cared for and you're sharing the best of yourself.
Yeah. Wow. I just to piggyback on what you said earlier on. Sometimes we treat symptoms instead of treating the root cause of the problem.
Yes.
Like when we have headache, instead of look asking ourselves, okay, why am I having headache? Is it because I'm stressed? Is it because I'm having fever? Or you're like, oh, I should deal with
Yeah.
the headache, and you keep treating the headache, and it doesn't stop because the root cause of the problem has not been dealt with. Oh, that's the importance of having a coach.
Yeah. Coach is
Yeah.
always good that way, right? Because they get to see the blind spots,
Yeah.
right? That's a beautiful thing. But yeah, no, it's really important that we think in those terms. But at the end of the day, the issue is sometimes people think personal branding is transactional, right? I will start building my personal brand so I can get a job. I'm going to start building my personal brand so I can become a coach or a consultant or a fractional CEO. And what I tell them is that, listen, guys, that's fine. It's good to have a laudable goal. But you've been in the workforce, let's say for 20 years, you might be in another 25, and reputation is forever. So why are you just stopping at getting a job? You're not going to be in that job forever. So what do you want to do? Keep starting over and starting over and starting over, as opposed to looking at your personal brand as it really is, which is people's view of you.
Yeah.
And if your view of you is positive, keep it up for the rest of your life until you don't want to work anymore. And then maybe you're transitioning to more philanthropy or more legacy or more giving back. Because the one thing that we do when we do work with guys who are in their 60s, sometimes they just want to give back. They've learned so much. They don't have to worry about money, but they say, you know what? How do I do that? Well, you can do it digitally, you can do it with a book, you can host a podcast, you can do speaking gigs, and giving is really the truest form of happiness, right? When
Yeah.
you're giving of yourself, that's when you truly feel enlightened and fulfilled. And personal branding, believe it or not, you have that happen when you're out there because you're getting instant feedback and you're sparking conversations, which is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Uh, uh, Before we go into the techniques and some of the tactics and of what personal branding and all that is, first of all, I'd love for you to tell us what personal branding is not, right? Before we start talking about what personal branding is.
Sure. So personal branding, what it's not, I'll read you a quote we actually are putting on our website tomorrow. Personal branding is not about your ego.
Mm.
It's about sharing your uniqueness in the service of others.
Wow.
That's how we define personal branding. Now, the specific thing, if we want to think about it, so if they want to write this down, personal branding, what it is, it's a transformational, authentic, and strategic approach to building and amplifying your personal brand. And the important last line is aligned with what truly matters to you.
Wow.
So that's how we define it.
Transformational, authentic approach.
Yeah.
And you said personal branding is not a race of feeding your ego, but one of service.
That's right. It's one of service. If it's done the way that we present it to the world and to our clients, it is exactly one of service. Because what ultimately happens when you are giving and when you're of service, that comes across as authentic and true and trustworthy. And it has to be true. It can't be, I'm doing it to be fake so I can get more business. Listen, I do this because I have our inspiration, our why is to inspire leaders. That's our why. So if I can inspire you or anybody listening to get out on social media and start trying it, then I've done my job. Those that are in the tribe that I can work with, that have the money, the budget, the time, and they're the right customer, will find me to work with me. But
Yes.
not everybody can work with me because we have a premium product. We're relatively expensive.
Yeah.
But we do that. That's why we work with CEOs, because they can afford what we do. and also they understand what we do once we get them through the education part.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Like, personal branding is sharing your uniqueness in service of others. Sharing your uniqueness in service of others. So it's your the fact that it's your uniqueness. It means that it's not necessarily the fact that you're sharing facts. It's more like you're sharing your story. You're sharing the things you've learned. You're sharing what you stand for in service of others, to inspire, to educate, to enlighten.
You got it. If you like, I could share a quick story on how two what would be identical businesses, if you look at it, and then when you find out a little bit more, you see that they're not identical. Would you like to hear that story?
Please do share the story.
Well, I have two gentlemen that are in the US. They're both in a business where they help people with their debt, right? So when
Yeah.
people have debt, they work with them. So I interview, and they're both in the same webinar. So I interview the first one, and I said, "Tell me more about that." Well, so this is person A. I work with couples who've got themselves in trouble because they, did too many credit cards or leveraged their mortgage, and they're in trouble and they don't know how to get out of it. So I work with couples. The other gentleman, you'll be happy to know, was from Gambia, right? So he's from Gambia. He immigrated to the US, and his target audience is immigrants from Africa who don't know what a credit card is, who don't know the debt instruments that exist in the US. And so he's educating them on what debt is and how you can leverage it effectively and how it can get you in trouble. And his story, there's no way that the gentleman who's from America, who deals with the couples, can have the perspective of someone who emigrated from Africa, from Gambia specifically, who has the perspective of an immigrant. That's what I'm talking about. Two of the same businesses that are not the same, and the learnings are not the same, and the perspectives are not the same because the customers are not the same.
Yeah.
That's an example of how you can look at yourself and say, what unique perspectives do I have in my world to be able to share? Because I'm telling you one thing that's really important. There's not one human being on the planet that has another person that has had their experiences. Not one. They're always different.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, it's asking yourself, okay, what makes me unique, and then asking yourself, who can I serve with this uniqueness?
Yes. Who are the people in my audience? So as these gentlemen did, one is, I'm very specific on who I am. I can't work with the couples, but I can work with what I know.
Yeah.
And my uniqueness of coming across from Africa to America was very interesting. And I was blown away by the story because it kind of came up by accident when I was asking about their businesses. Then I used that story to illustrate how people that apparently are in the same business.
Yeah. You do personal branding for CEOs and the likes of that. How is personal branding for a content creator, someone who is like, oh, I'm a full-time content creator? Why do I create content? How is it different from someone who is a traditional CEO or a professional, or the likes of that?
Well, they're different businesses, right? So one is 100% content creator. The other one is running a business. So that wants to add leveraging their personal brand to be able to do something that either grows the business or grows themselves, or whatever it happens to be, right? So for example, a CEO I was talking to the other day said, I want to position myself because in 2 years I want to sell the business, and to do that I want to make sure that our business gets exposed to the right people in and the VCs and private equity firms. So how do I go about doing that? So what we do to look at the steps are different. As a CEO has to be able to fit that into their world, because they are already working 60 to 70 hour weeks. They don't have another 10 hours a week to add content development.
Yeah.
So what we do is there's two ways that we work with people. One is we can be their coach and say, okay, you want to do the work, you have a team, let us help you on the intricacies of personal branding. And the other one, which is what most of them do, is that they'll have us do the work for them in an outsourced way. And here's the fun part. The reason that works is because it's video. It wouldn't work if we were writing their content and trying to get into their voice. But if it's their face and their videos, now we're just supporting that with the tactical hashtags and audience growth and things that all of us know how to do on the digital platforms that many CEOs don't. So we become them online, and it's their face. And when they have to interact, then we teach them how to do that as well. So that's how it's done. We teach them how to batch content, how to do it in one shot, how to story tell. how to build influence, how to build audience. So we teach them all that, and we do it for them based on the budget that they have and the objectives that they have.
Yeah, yeah. There's in online. There's something that's trending now where called the word authenticity, and a lot of people have different definition for what it might be. So for me, I feel like that there's a very thin line between authenticity and strategic positioning. Right? How do we know when we are like we've moved away from one to the other, or are they just the same thing in different words?
Well, they're great questions, right? One is positioning matters because you want to be able. So, for example, in my world, I want to be seen in my position as a global expert in personal branding, working with CEOs, founders, and builders. That's what I want to be known from a positioning point of view, right? Not working with students, not working with employees, not being a trainer. I want to be an expert, which means a coach and a practitioner, right? So that's positioning. My execution is authentic. I am going to be me. See the difference? So my
Wow.
execution is when you look at my videos, I'm sure you've seen my videos. It's no different than the conversation we're having now. If you had a camera on me, I would be talking the same way. If I was having a coffee with my wife, I'll be having this. I mean, I'm not going to talk about personal branding because she doesn't care, but you know what I mean, right? It's authenticity is the truest self of you. So in my case, I tend to lead with my heart, but I have my friends and I have other clients who lead with their head. And I say to them, don't try to be a heart leader if you're not a heart leader. Be a head leader, be an intellectual. That's okay. Because if you try to be the opposite, if I tried to be an intellectual, it would not work. If I tried to be funny, it would not work. But I am going to be me every single time. And that works because that's how the people in my world know me.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Wow. So at first I used to think that authenticity and strategic position were two different things that you could approach, but now I see that they are both a collabo. You have to like they come together and they work for you. So they are both tools of the trade.
Correct. They're tools of the trade and they're both critical. But the most important thing about authenticity is just try not to be somebody you're not, right? So we have a client who was very uncomfortable with video, and his words to us were, he says, I know I have to learn this skill. It's kind of like eating broccoli. I hate it, but I know it's good for me. So I will go through the process and learn because I know it's good for me, because I'll learn how to story tell. I'll learn how to tell a story in 90 seconds or 2 minutes. And that's something I can take with me in my other areas of opportunity in my business.
Yeah.
So that's the example. But he had to be him. He can't be me. He's not going to be as enthusiastic as I might be or as passionate because that's how I live my life. He would be different, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, I'm just taking down a lot of notes and I'm learning a lot. My next follow-up question is: now we've talked about the importance of personal branding, what personal branding is. Now, I would love to concretize this concept of talking about personal branding, right? If personal branding
Sure.
was a living organism, right? Um, what would be the components of its anatomy? Like if it was, let's say it was something like a human, human there's a head. The head is for the thinking. There's
Right.
the heart. The heart is for pumping blood, and then also it tells us stuff that our head doesn't tell us. What would you say is the anatomy of personal branding? So this is what it contains.
Wow, where did you get that question? I've never heard that question. I've done hundreds of podcasts. That's a brilliant question. So I have to think about this. I guess, it's kind of like, and I'm not a scientist by any stretch, but if you were to look at a cell, right? And I'm not going to break down the cell because then I'll look
Yeah,
foolish.
yeah,
But what happens with a cell is everything works together,
yes,
right? Be able to build on to something else. So a cell, it can live on its own, but it only becomes something when it connects to somebody else. So if I were to think about it in that way, the cell itself is really a good metaphor for that.
yeah,
But the connection is the humanity about building something you need other cells to work with, right? And personal branding doesn't happen in a vacuum. If I don't have an audience, people that will care about me and I care about them, then they will never grow. So I think that's the metaphor I would use.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
a fantastic metaphor because when you brought up the metaphor, what I was thinking was the idea of cancerous cells, right? I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, please share.
So cancerous cells, like when someone has cancer, usually it's when parts of their body it reproduce cells that is beyond what it's supposed to reproduce. You understand? Like for me, I feel like it's when cells of our body they forget their purpose. They start growing, multiplying for the sake of multiplying and growing. If that itself is what causes cancer and all that in the different parts of the body.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to put it.
So so tying it back to personal branding, you talked about personal. You said personal branding is sharing your uniqueness, and sharing your uniqueness. You didn't stop there. You said for the service, right? So it wasn't just sharing.
In the service of others, right?
Okay.
So not for, but in the service of
Yeah.
others, which means you mentioned the word right at the beginning of this podcast. This is sharing with generosity. In other words, you know stuff. So, for example, you can ask me any question at all, and I'm not going to hold back on anything that I know. I will tell you everything. That's generosity because people pay me for that advice,
Yeah.
right? I will share it with you if you ask the question. So
Yeah.
that's the generosity of spirit, because at the end of that, people will go, "Oh my God, these are the kind of people I want to work with. They're honest, they have integrity, they want to do good by the world, they want to help." That because don't forget, there's competition in this world, right?
Yeah.
So how do you choose who you want to work with? Well, you've got it right up front. If you hear me and you like it, great. If you don't like me, then you're going to go find somebody else. That's okay too.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Now we've seen what personal branding is. We've also looked at what personal branding is not. We've also
Yeah.
compared personal branding as a sell and all that. Now I'm like, okay, I'm ready. I want to build my personal branding. What should I do first? What should I start with first?
So the first thing I would do. So first thing I would do is you can go to at the end, and you and I'll give you the links. You saw them on Podmatch, but we have a link on our website that you can go watch a video and go get a free worksheet and just go work and practice and go work through your uniqueness. What are your credibility? What's your perspectives? You go through that. Like, what are you known for? So we have this worksheet. It's free, no obligation. Sign up for our newsletter. Come to our YouTube channel. Learn, learn, learn. That's the first step.
Yeah.
Once you've learned, then the practice of that, and I'll come back to the steps in a minute. But if you're saying, how do I start? Start by learning about you. And so that's where you could start is to get those tools. The second thing I would say is go on your LinkedIn and start following people that you like. Like if you like Richard Branson, go see what he's doing. If you like, Mel Robbins, go see what she's doing and how she's doing it. And then go on and what I call celebrate others. Go comment on other people's stuff because what you want is the LinkedIn algorithm to start to recognize you as somebody who's active. So that's important because then you'll get served the right kind of content. And then when you're ready to serve your own content, LinkedIn will recognize you or the algorithm will recognize you and people will be served your content. And the other part about that is reciprocal stuff. If I went wisdom on your LinkedIn and you posted something and I said, great job, wonderful, I really feel blah, 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 you're going to feel like, oh, when Alan posts again, I better go say something about him.
Yeah.
What does that do? Creates engagement,
Yeah.
right? And it's authentic because I'm really celebrating what you said and not just saying good job, but something insightful about what you posted.
Yeah.
That's what I try to do. The other day, I did one on Gary Vaynerchuk, who you may know is a famous
Yeah.
owner, digital media guy. And I went and did a comment. Do you know that my comment had 522 impressions?
Wow.
My comment. So you start thinking about that going, 522 people were served my comment.
Wow.
Usually you think they get lost in those 1,200, 1,500 comments. They don't because somebody will see that. And then they go look at your profile. And then, so that's the ecosystem I'm talking about is you need to be out there and allow stuff to hit you. If you're not out there, nothing will happen and you'll never know that nothing happened because you're not out there. And that's what I encourage people to do to start, learn and get out there. Then we can talk about what are the steps after that to actually get yourself out there. And I'm happy to share the 5 steps that we have that we use, but there's nothing complicated about the steps, but that's how I would get started.
Okay. I'd love to just take the opportunity to follow up on the 5 steps.
Okay, step number one, I just talked about, right? So it's really understand your, what we call your brand DNA, but understand the uniqueness of you and use that worksheet that you can go down with that. Number two is based on that, those perspectives, you can say, okay, great. Now I know what I can talk about, what I'm credible about. So for example, in my world, to give you an example, to tell story around that. So when and this will make a nice illustration for you. When I started this journey 4 years ago, I was wondering, do people see me as a leader or as a marketing guy? So what I did is I did videos on marketing, and I did videos and on leadership
Yeah.
leadership at the time, right? And then I wanted to see what would happen. Nobody cared about my marketing videos. I got crickets, no likes, no shares, no nothing. Leadership is how people saw me. And I went, oh my goodness, isn't that interesting? So now how do I take that? Why do people like me that way? Why do people see me that way? So went back and looked at it and I said, oh, they see me because I used to be in this leadership organization called YPO, still in it. And people saw me that way because, oh, so that's how I'm seen. I thought I was seen this way, but I'm actually seen that way.
Yeah.
And then, so that was back then. And then now in the personal branding world, I wanted to shift the narrative because so now my content is both leadership and personal branding because I believe that personal branding is actually a leadership tenet. When you're doing that, you're leading because you're sharing. And true leadership is about sharing, isn't it?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's about giving others. So that's step one is the brand DNA or your perspective. Step two is what's the content? And the way that we recommend that is like a book. If you were to write a book, you would have 12 chapters, which is 12 months a year. And then what are the 4 things you'd say under each theme? Right? That's it. So that now you've got it laid out. And then now you say, okay, now I've got a content plan. Maybe you do it 1 quarter at a time. And then you say, okay, great. Based on that, now I have to actually record those videos. So what do I do there? Well, we recommend you batch content because humans do well when they do the same thing over and over and over. So if you did one video and then 2 weeks did another video, it would take you 20 minutes to do a 2-minute video. But if you do one 2-minute video and you do the next one right after, right after, with no scripting, by the way, we do not recommend scripting. Pick a title, pick a hook, tell a story, you're done. We don't want any scripts and reading it because that's not authentic, is it? You'll know I'm reading.
Yeah.
Right?
Sounds like a robot.
So that's step 3 is the recording. And then step 4 is getting out on social media. And then step 5 is the engagement part I talked to you about at the beginning. It's really full circle. You always have to nurture and engage so that your content lives and also you're going to be connecting with people and then they'll see your content and then it grows. And those are the 5 steps that we use.
Wow. Like the way you laid out the steps made it pretty much really easy. And while we were explaining those 5 steps, I have like 3 questions which just popping up in my head, and I'll quickly ask them before I forget. The first question is, just to piggyback on what you said earlier on, you said you got 500 connections, and I feel that the vanity metrics, and we've got to a stage where we've started seeing people as numbers, and what we just want is the numbers to go up. Like to have 500 persons, if to have 500 persons meet you on the street and say, "Hey, hi, Alan, hi, I love what you said," like that, like 500 persons, that's a lot of persons. Like I don't think I've ever had that number of persons talk to me or at the same time in real life. Right? But when we see that number, like 500, I could have gotten 10,000, or 20,000.
Yeah, it's incredible, right? So here's the magic, just so you're aware of the numbers. So there's only 1% of people on LinkedIn that are content creators, only 1. So that means there's a 99% opportunity for everybody listening to this if you're not doing that, right?
Yeah.
Number 2 is the vanity metrics you talk about. They're vanity if that's what you care about. They're not vanity if you're growing. So for today, if I have 200, if I go do a video and 200 people see it, and then in a month and a half, 1,000 people see it, isn't that a pretty good growth? That means 1,000 more people or 800 more people saw my post.
Yeah.
What can happen there? You know where the leads come from? They come from those impressions.
Yeah.
They don't always come from the engagement. So there's a lot of opportunity in growing your impressions on LinkedIn and making sure you're doing the engagement, and then leads will show up on your doorstep because you're active and out there and growing. So
Yeah.
that's what I would say to you is really important. Don't get hung up on the vanity, because you're really right. If you did a speaking gig tomorrow and had 40 people in the room, you'd be happy.
Yeah.
Wow, I
Yeah.
got 500 people in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
That's what.
And I get them in the room tomorrow. And I get them in the room tomorrow. And I get them in the room tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it goes on forever.
Yeah, that's the thing. Let's not always forget that these numbers, there are people behind it, not just numbers.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. But you can't, like, you're not an influencer. You're not chasing the number. You're chasing the ability to have a new relationship.
yeah,
That's really what's
yeah,
in there. And if so that's I don't need 5,000 clients, right?
yeah,
I need 500 clients. So I need to talk to 1 million people, maybe to get 500 clients. Okay. Over a year, I'll talk to 1 million people,
yeah,
because or through the medium of podcasts or speaking or workshops or webinars or my content, right?
yeah. I think going back to the definition of personal branding, it's what differentiates someone who's building an intentional personal brand from a content creator, an influencer, because you're not just trying to chase views to become so that you probably get brand sponsorships or any of those stuff. Instead, you're trying to share your uniqueness in service of others.
You got it. You love that quote. Eh? That's your new
Yeah,
quote, isn't it?
yeah. I'm going to frame that and hang it on my wall. Yeah,
That's cool. You know what's also cool? There's another opportunity for your listeners is to think about YouTube. Don't forget YouTube. If you're going to create videos, YouTube is your friend because they stay there forever.
yeah,
So if when you're doing your videos, make sure you have a YouTube channel, and you can learn how to optimize them. You can hire people on Fiverr or other places in the world to help you optimize your channel. But I've got, I don't know, now 70 or 80 videos on my channel that people can now go to and learn. And
yeah,
then they're going to say, "Oh, I want to subscribe." And then maybe at some point I'll be able to monetize that.
yeah,
It's not the goal. I couldn't care less now, but maybe in 5 years, maybe I'll want to do that. It'll be a choice I make.
yeah. But if you don't build it, you won't be able to make that choice.
You got it.
Yeah,
Exactly right.
yeah. I think the next question I want to ask you, when you talk about the 5 steps, one of the biggest problems professionals and creators out there face when they are creating content is they are in the business actually, right? They are walking the talk, but
Yep.
they find it really hard to create content that is authentically them. So for me, you talk about what they shouldn't be scripting and all that, but I think I want you to, like, do you have a system where you recommend for professionals to help them mine ideas from their daily life, from what they are doing, from what they're spending time on, from the questions, like from what they're already doing, and then convert that to content. That way, it's authentically their content, and they're happy to talk about it.
Yeah. So we do use a process, and that starts out with that brand DNA session I was talking
Yeah,
about. So what happens in that brand DNA is we do a 90-minute interview of the customer to really get inside their head, their perspectives, their credibility, and the like. So that's for us the starting point to build out a content plan, right?
yeah,
If you don't have the luxury of working with us in that way, then you can use, one of the AI engines, ChatGPT or Claude or something like that, and say, okay, help me with my content. This is who I am. Here's my LinkedIn. Can you give me some ideas on what content? And that's a starting point. You go, those are some good ideas. I didn't think of that. Then you refine them, and then you can go build those. So those tools are available right now to help you build out your plan, and they're quite remarkable. We use them as supporting tools for us, but they're not, because obviously we're in a higher end business. But if you're just starting out, I would go there right away and ask it. I'd like to build my personal brand. What do you think? Here's who I am. Here's my LinkedIn. Boom, and then it'll come up with some ideas for you.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think in an age where there are answers to everything, the problem is people finding the courage to ask the question.
Yeah, agreed.
Just with the remaining couple of minutes that's left, I just wanted to quickly touch on. There are a lot of people who are just starting a business for the first time. They're not exactly what you call a CEO. They are still solopreneurs. They are still trying to juggle everything because they can't afford to pay someone. can't afford to hire someone. And then there are some professionals out there, lawyers that are just starting out in their field, no experience, they just coming out fresh at the oven, right? And for them, they might have this question that this internal monologue that, well, I don't really have anything. I'm not good enough. I'm not an expert yet. What would you recommend to get someone through that?
Well, it is a mindset problem. I think you described it beautifully because if you do the work, you will find out the gifts that you have, and everybody has them. So, one of the questions we get, Wisdom, which is people say, why would anybody listen to me?
Yeah,
Right? That's
yeah.
one of the questions. Do you know what the answer is to that question? What you think is normal, somebody else might find fascinating.
Wow, 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 wow.
Right? Because everybody has a gift. You could be a donut maker. You could be a seamstress. You could be, worked on a fruit truck. Well, how does that make me an expert? Well, you might be an expert in productivity. You might be an expert in dealing with customers in 30 seconds and building trust. There's stuff that everybody has. And the most important thing is all of you, even if you're starting out, you have relationships. You went to school with them, you played football with them, they're part of your church, your synagogue, your mosque. You have relationships already.
Yeah,
So start with those and then work the concentric circles out, and then you can share. And if you're sharing one piece of content, so share somebody else's content and comment on it. Or
yeah,
go celebrate Wisdom's content, say it's really good. And then you start building and nurturing relationships. And then over time, you'll have the confidence to want to be out there. But just by being out there, you're different than 99% of everybody else.
yeah. Yeah, I feel that personally, where that problem comes from, the imposter problem is, when we set out to create content, we set out to create content for the people who are probably the experts in the field. Instead, we forget the fact that we're creating the content for the guy who is just getting started, who is just probably a customer doesn't even know that he has such problem, and not the experts, right?
Yeah, the experts don't need you.
Yeah,
The experts have their perspectives. I get very frustrated, to be honest with you, around a lot of the experts in the world because they don't see personal branding the way I do. So
yeah,
that's okay. But I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to my target audience, my persona, which is CEOs in transition, CEOs looking for what's next in their lives, how to become more fulfilled, more transforming in their life. That's what I'm looking for. That's the audience I want to attract. And
yeah,
if I attract that audience, then I know how to be able to help them because they're my target persona. I can do lots, coaches, consultants, authors. We have all of those as clients, but we know the ones that make the biggest difference is someone who says to me, I don't know what to do next. Can you help me?
yeah,
Yes, we can.
yeah.
And everybody can do that in their field of expertise.
Yeah, wow. I've truly learned a lot from this section. Like I just feel that I used to the way I used to think of personal branding is a different game entirely, and I know that the way I approach it will change ultimately. Thank you, Alan,
I'm so
for
happy. That's
coming
great.
on the podcast. Like I really feel like I had a one-on-one session with you, and you got to coach me and changed how I perceive things.
I'm really happy that that happened because at the end of the day, if I can inspire someone to do that, then it makes my day. So you've made my day. Thank you.
Wow, I'm glad I'm glad I did that. For those of us who've listened to you, like, wow, I really like well, I really love this guy. I love his principles. I love his values. I would love to connect with him. I would love to see the next steps. He mentioned the brand DNA. I would love to see what that is all about. I'd love to move on. Right? I just don't want to listen and listen and then go on with my day. I want to take action. What would be the next
Good
steps
for you.
for where can they connect, meet you, and stuff like that?
Yeah. So first step would be there's a couple of ways to reach me, but the easiest way would be on LinkedIn, right? Just look Alan McLaren on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And then what I would ask you to do is just say, I heard you on Wisdom's podcast
Yeah.
and I'd like to connect because then I will connect because I'm very careful. There's people from all over the world that are trying to sell me stuff. And I
Yeah.
want to make sure that's that. And right? But then the other place is go to if you want to put the link and you can grab it from Podmatch, the information on the worksheet. So they'll go to a landing page. There's a 30-minute video on there that you can watch about personal branding. So you'll learn a little more than what I shared today. and then you can download the worksheet. You can join our newsletter. All of those things are available for all of you for free. And if you want to work with us, well, that's another conversation. But let's start out by making sure you get the value you need to build it. And if you're the right audience, then of course we'd be happy to talk to you.
Yeah, and all the links Alan just mentioned will be in the show notes and the description, so you can click on them and go check them out. Well, it was really nice having you on the podcast, and I would love to probably invite you next time in the future to come on the podcast.
Yeah, that, or you can also interview my business partner who knows the same things but has a different perspective. So she would offer you a completely different way to think about, I mean, not completely different way, we think the same ways, but she has a different style about her, and I think you would enjoy that as well.
Yeah, well, I'll if you could connect me now, I would greatly appreciate that. If you could connect me, I would greatly appreciate that. Honestly, wow.
I'll make a note here. I'll talk to her about it tomorrow.
Yeah, because our uniqueness will be is completely different from your uniqueness.
100%. Her uniqueness, her experience, all of those things are different, and she's brilliant. And we've been business partners for 25 years.
Wow.
But we have a different way of explaining things. And hers is going to be similar content, but a different way to express it. And everybody learns differently, right? So should be another one that she's great. So I think you'd enjoy that as well.
Personally, I believe that the messenger is as important as the message itself.
That's right. Marshall McLuhan said that, right? The medium is the message. So yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much once again.
Thanks, it was nice to meet you, and that looks great. Awesome. I look forward to it, and thank you for taking the time as well.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I got to learn a lot in this episode. My mind was completely changed, and I trust that the same thing happened to you. And if you got so much value from this episode, give me a review on the podcast listening platform that you're listening. It helps to other persons to discover such great content. Until next time, you're listening to Wisdom, and let's keep building.